Hi, my name is Michael Bernaski, and this is the second series that I've recorded for American Mission Healthcare. The topic of this series is financial management in healthcare in particular, and it is probably 2 to 3 hours of time when you're conducting it in person. The videos won't be that long, but this is intended as a train the trainer video or set of videos. Just like last time, I'm hoping that you will be the people who will pass on your newfound knowledge after you've extended it and probably go further than I could ever imagine in understanding it. So um, that's the purpose of these videos. The agenda for the course is, of course, typically we would do some introductions, and I find it useful to go around the room and have each member of the conduct tell you and tell their fellow classmates kind of what they're trying to learn and accomplish in the training and what their specific objectives are. It's always great to have people think about that right up front, and then along the way, you can make sure that you kind of cross those off. And then typically we'll go into the what and the why. The what being what is financial management, and the why being, why do we even care about it? Why is it important? And then the key elements, which will be the bulk of the time, talking about some basic concepts, some basic ideas, talking about the three key financial statements that we use for financial reporting, talk about the key roles involved in a finance um, ecosystem. And then lastly, we're going to go a little bit deeper on cost accounting and maybe some revenue accounting as well as part of that. And then we'll wrap up and try to set the stage for how to use this information going forward. So let's begin by talking about financial management and define it a little bit. There are different types of resources that institutions can leverage for their purposes. They can use human resources. Obviously, that's many ways the most important one. Institutions can leverage natural resources. Think about water and those kind of things. And we, of course, consume financial resources, also known as capital, to operate our institutions. And financial management, therefore, is the discipline of attracting and using and growing the financial or capital assets, the money needed to operate the institution. Similarly, there is human resource management, and at the role of government and all of us as individuals is to be good stewards of the natural resources as well. But I can anticipate that we'll have a future course on human resource management, but probably not one on natural resource management. Pretty often to get to the question of as to accounting. And what is accounting in the relationship to financial management? And the way I think about this is that accounting is an important part of the mechanics of how we manage financial assets. For example, what happens to a unit of currency when it's paid by a patient for a service, right? Every step along the way, we need to be able to track that dollar, and part of that dollar or part of that shilling will end up in the hands of employees as their salaries. It'll be used to pay for goods and services. It'll be used to go to subcontractors and the whole like. So there's quite a bit of uh, rigor that goes into accounting, and it plays a very important role in institutional management. So I'm going to walk through a little scenario so we can think about the basic topics here and do so in sort of layman's terms. So let's start off thinking about somebody who's out there in one of the communities that we support and they get hurt. Um, and they need to be seen in a medical facility. So they go to the clinic. Now, the clinic is a building, it's a location, and it represents something, a building or a campus, a tent, a vehicle. It could be anything, but the clinic itself is something that represents an investment. It has financial value, and it requires money to maintain. So we've got to keep it up and keep the roof from sagging or the walls from caving in on us. And that's a form of a financial decision or a financial stewardship, is managing investments well. There have to be doctors and nurses to take care of the patients, and for the most part, they're paid a salary. Sometimes their salary is reinvested and redonated back to the institution or back to another institution, but it's important that we value their time as an important asset. And assigning it a financial value is an important part of that. The clinic needs an inventory of supplies. So a Band-Aid here is just the example, but obviously there's a storeroom and all the things the doctors and nurses would need to take care of the patients. And I should probably mention the administrators as well. Of course, they're part of the picture and an important one. These are all the things that are necessary. And lastly, I'll show some utilities, right? So some electricity for the clinic so that we can operate some equipment and have some lights on, and things like that are an important part of the financial management. When the patient is done, the patient leaves, and hopefully this is the opportunity for us to collect some revenue. Everything we've talked about so far, both the investments in the clinic and then the operating expenses of the people's time and the goods and the utilities and all that kind of stuff, those are all examples of cash outflows. And then we need to obviously have something to pay that with, and hopefully a portion of that is revenue from patients in addition to donations and other sources of revenue that we might get. And then, of course, we hope that if that patient ever needs care again, they come back. So we hope to have a relationship with that patient, and it's important to think about that as a financial asset as well. The loyalty that that patient may have in this clinic, especially after receiving great care, is an important asset that we can turn into money should they need future care in the future. So we've talked about the three basic categories here: investments in the clinic building itself, the operating expenses, for example, the Band-Aids and the electricity and the doctor's time, and then the operating revenue, money that we get from the patients. Hopefully that helps make this a little bit more real, but it's essentially the flow of money. Now, why is this so important? Well, resources are the key to survival and the health of any institution. You can run out, you can use them poorly, and it's crucially important that they be well managed. I simulated a graph here on the right where you can see that at some point in time in the future, marked by the dashed line, the particular clinic that I was thinking about or imagined was going to have cash out that was greater than cash in. And this happens obviously with a great many institutions in Africa. And being able to know that in advance or even know it when it's happening can be somewhat tricky at times, but it's important that we have that information as good senior managers. The second reason is that transparency is key to understand what's happening inside the clinic so that we can diagnose problems and figure out what to do about them. So if revenue is less than we expected, or expenses are growing faster than we expected, it's crucially important that we have the financial transparency to know what's happening, but then also diagnose and figure out what to do about it. And then lastly, sound financial management is important to all stakeholders, and it builds trust. Whether it be donors who might be donating money to your facility, or whether it be patients who don't want to do business with institutions that are corrupt or irresponsible. It's very, very important that we be a well-run institution from a financial perspective, and that's part of being a good community citizen as well. Okay, we're going to move forward and get into some more details, but hopefully that was a useful introduction to financial management.